Every day we see something new come out in the news, and a lot of this has to do with the PlayStation hack that came out recently and things like that. And more that you look into this, the more and more you have to think that Microsoft knows exactly what they're doing, and that Sony really are late to the party if you kind of think about it. So, at the end of the day, I feel like Sony is in first place with the sales of their PlayStation. The problem is, it's just one of those things where it's really just going to be a big issue going forward in terms of sustainability with what they're able to do. So I thought it'd be very interesting to kind of come in here and do this video and talk about this a little bit more. According to these anyway, according to this leak, Sony is pressuring Insomniac Games to lay off employees right now, and they even close a studio despite the fact that Spider-Man 2 is supposedly a hit from everything we've seen. Recently discovered data from Insomniac Games leak shows that Sony pressured the studio to lay off some of its employees to cut costs. Layoffs in the game studio were among the biggest video game news story of 2023, so it's not really a surprise to see new mentions of this trend. Earlier in the week, hackers who breached Insomniac Games' database released around 1.67 terabytes of confidential data regarding the company's future. The massive leak included information about the next 5 games, including the unannounced titles like the X-Men game. Among the leaked information, there were also many details about the upcoming Wolverine game, including an alpha PC build of the title. Now, as people dig deeper into the leaks, there's more information surfacing. Recently, some files in the leak revealed that Sony pressured Insomniac Games to make budget cuts. According to IGN, Sony requested the company to remove around 50 to 75 people from the studio and recommended to teams from the upcoming Wolverine and Spider-Man 3 game be cut and replaced with members from Ratchet and Clank. Part of the reason for these layoffs was Sony's worry about the growth and development costs of the studio. Sony was concerned that Spider-Man 2 cost around $30 million more than its original budget, which was already $270 million, and needed to sell over 7 million copies to turn a profit. As the game reportedly sold 5 million units in the first couple weeks after release, it could hit it, but we'll have to see. The leaked documents also show that Sony tried to cut staff off from many of the first-party studios, although names were not officially revealed. Unfortunately, this doesn't sound good. It's possible to notice that the Visual Arts Group laid off several senior designers back in October, while Media Molecule diminished its workers from 135 to 115 at the same time. 2023 was a difficult year for the gaming industry, while several excellent games such as, well, according to this, Baldur's Gate 3, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Alan Wake 2, Starfield came out in 2023. It's also full of companies laying off employees. Big names like Unity laid off a total of over 1,100 employees, while we also had Embracer Group letting go almost 1,000 workers. Companies like BioWare, Riot Games, Take-Two, CD Projekt Red, and Electronic Arts also diminished their workforce, showing how widespread the trend is in gaming. So this is bad news all around. And what's very interesting is you kind of look at it and it's talking about sort of the future of what's going on in gaming. And it turns out that like Sony's particular way of doing things is pretty unsustainable per them. Right? This isn't like me or somebody else saying that. This is literally Sony saying, hey, we can't afford to do things status quo because games like some of these games are going to cost $400 million to make. They're not going to make that money back, and especially like a licensed game like Spider-Man or whatever, you have to pay for the license and things like that, so you're not really making as much as you normally would. So yeah, this is really sort of a desperate measures type situation that Sony finds themselves in, and unfortunately it doesn't look like it's going to get better anytime soon. Hopefully they can get some things worked out or whatever. Like, I've played Spider-Man 2, it's an okay game, but there's nothing in there that tells me, think about this for a second, Spider-Man 2, the video game, costs more to create than Spider-Man the movie. Like, is that crazy to you guys or no? Like, I don't know. To me, it sounds absolutely insane when you say it out loud. And I get that video games are making the video game industry is making more than like the movies and music and television industry are doing right now. But still, to think about that and go, okay, well, how in the hell does this video game, which to me plays just like the last game, by the way. How is that even possible that this could cost so much more money? I don't understand it. It is kind of unfortunate, in my opinion, that this kind of stuff is happening. But at the same time, maybe not that crazy to think about it. You know, if you think about like how much these things cost and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, this is why, and you go, okay, well, crap. How is Microsoft in the right then? Well, if you think about this, right? Microsoft has always said for a long time that, you know, this is a situation where you need to have recurrent income. And the way you get the recurrent income is just one of those situations where you have Game Pass, right? So what Game Pass does is you have a certain amount of people paying monthly to access a certain amount of content. And that's probably the better way to do it. Whereas Sony, you know, they're really counting on these games to sell a certain amount. Like, look, Spider-Man 2 has to sell over 7 million copies at full price. And that is possibly just to break even or go slightly ahead on the cost of the game itself, not counting something like, you know, where they might need a budget for marketing and all that kind of stuff. A lot of times the budgets for these things also count, you know, towards these. So you could see a situation where, you know, you need another $100 million. So you could be looking at 8, 9, 10 million to have to sell, right? So even though it does seem sort of successful, it's maybe not as successful as people were trying to kind of make it look at first. Now, Microsoft, on the other hand, has this way that it doesn't have to sell a certain amount. You just need people subscribing to your Game Pass, right? So, not to say that nobody ever gets laid off at their studios or anything, but even when you have a game like Redfall, which was a flop, had that game been like a PlayStation game with a PlayStation developer, that studio would probably have closed, to be quite frank about it. But they get another chance with Xbox because guess what? Everybody's still paying the fee for Game Pass, and you're making $1 billion+ a month just on that. So it doesn't matter. You know, Microsoft can also do games that aren't a situation where, you know, where games aren't necessarily have to be multiplayer or have to be anything like that. And that, I feel like, is a very important going forward, right? You've got to have a situation where that kind of works out for itself, right? You've got to be able to have and make whatever games you want. And Sony is in this thing where, you know, now we know Insomniac Games canceled Sunset Overdrive 2, canceled Resistance 4. They're not doing anything but the Marvel games, and they're kind of locked into that, which is really disappointing. So what do you guys feel about this? How do you guys feel about, you know, Microsoft really being right? Sony is doing the things that Microsoft started doing years and years ago because it's not sustainable for the console the way it's going. Let me know. Sound off down below. Rack 'em up. I'm Crap Gamer. This has been Crap Gamer Reviews. Please like the video, share it out, subscribe if you haven't already done so. Peace.